This weekend's negotiations between the U.S. and Iran on issues including Tehran's nuclear program have now been postponed. While security officials are in Switzerland preparing for these talks, today the Swiss foreign minister announced they are not proceeding as scheduled. And the White House confirmed last night Vice President J.D. Vance is no longer flying to Switzerland to kickstart these talks. During yesterday's White House briefing, the vice president signaled the talks could be delayed.
I plan to go to Switzerland. Exactly when, we think these technical negotiations are going to start sometime this weekend. That's still the plan, but that could change because it's not an easy country, Iran, to get out of, and so we're trying to figure out exactly when that's going to happen. I suspect this weekend, but I'm not sure.
However, while the U.S. Iran deal calls for an immediate end to fighting on all fronts, Lebanese media is reporting that more than a dozen people were killed in a new round of Israeli airstrikes. Israel's military also said today 4 soldiers were killed in southern Lebanon. Israel's prime minister released a statement a short time ago. We've got it for you here. He says he met with top Israeli officials this morning, writing in part, quote, "My instructions are clear. Israel will not tolerate attacks on our soldiers or our territory, and it will exact a very heavy price from Hezbollah for these attacks," end quote. CBS News congressional reporter Taurean Small joins us now from our D.C. bureau with all of these developments emerging today, Taurean. So update our viewers on the simple detail of why the negotiations are postponed.
Well, Errol, from the White House, they're saying this is a logistics reason, which is why this has been postponed, something that the vice president hinted at there in that soundbite, saying that even though they had discussed this hadn't been finalized. And a White House spokesperson said that this is a bit of a complex situation, which is why it's taking a bit longer to hammer out those details there. I think the deeper issue, which is something you just hinted at, those ongoing hostilities in Lebanon, is complicating these peace talks. Iranian negotiators said that they want guarantees that that conflict will cease during these conversations. But it's clear that Israeli leader Netanyahu is not on the same page with the United States when it comes to this peace deal and is unwilling at this point to stop any conflict at the moment.
Now, we know that senior Trump officials also briefed House and Senate leaders about the Iran deal yesterday. So how are the folks on Capitol Hill reacting to what they learned at this stage?
Yeah, Democrats are quite united in their condemnation of this deal. A lot of them saying this paled in comparison to the JCPOA, the Obama-era Iran nuclear deal, mostly because of the goals that were instituted there, had quite a bit of oversight in their mind. And they said this is a bit nebulous. I think the response that we heard from the administration is that this is a completely different situation. This is a much weaker Iran compared to when Obama took office. What I found most instructive, though, was the range of emotions and responses we heard from Republicans. There were those who fell into 2 different camps, skeptics and then wait and see. Take a listen to what a few of them we caught up with yesterday had to say.
I do have concerns that certain aspects of this deal might be a step in the wrong direction.
Everything I've heard about it causes me concern. I'm interested in learning more about it, but I think it's certainly a mixed bag at best.
History demonstrates that giving billions of dollars to theocratic lunatics who want to murder us is an exceptionally bad idea. And I think, unfortunately, the president is receiving some really bad advice on this deal.
Senator Cruz there, the most notable critic, considering he is a staunch supporter of the president. In his justification for slamming this deal this week, he wanted to make clear that he's separating the military operation from these ongoing negotiations, saying that he was fully supportive of that, just unclear about this. One major flashpoint that we're seeing bipartisan concern too is this $300 billion reconstruction fund. The White House got in front of this, including the vice president, saying that this won't be coming from U.S. taxpayers. There would be Gulf nations funding this. However, lawmakers are still concerned about the optics of rewarding, essentially, Iran for their decades-long terror campaign, Errol.
All right, Taurean Small in Washington. Taurean, thanks. As we told you just a few moments ago, Lebanese state media is reporting at least 18 people have been killed in Israel's deadliest attacks since the U.S. and Iran signed their initial agreement. Hugo Bachega with our partners at BBC News is following developments for us from Beirut.
Lebanon State News Agency has described the Israeli attacks across the Nabatea district as one of the most intense in this war, saying that multiple buildings have been hit. And these Israeli attacks have continued this morning. Now, Israel says it was targeting people and infrastructure linked to Hezbollah. It said these attacks were in response to violations by Hezbollah of a ceasefire that had been announced here in the war in Lebanon, a ceasefire that has obviously failed to stop the conflict, with attacks continuing from both sides. Now, this morning there has been confirmation by the Israeli military that 4 servicemen were killed in Lebanon by attacks carried out by Hezbollah, including a battalion commander. So I think what we're seeing here is the Israeli response to these attacks.
All right, let's dig into Hugo Bachega's reporting now with Elisa Ewers. She's a senior fellow for Middle East Studies at CFR. That's the Council on Foreign Relations. Good morning, Elisa. What do you make of what we're learning this morning? Could this all have been predicted, these divergent interests between Israel and the U.S.?
Good morning, Errol. And I think the fact that Lebanon was included in the MOU after strong Iranian pressure on the Trump administration signals that this was always going to be a flashpoint, right? And you needed to both constrain Hezbollah from continuing to attack IDF soldiers in the southern part of Lebanon, and you had to constrain Israel from responding to those attacks. And so these kind of peppering of violations between the two sides were unlikely to stop just because the MOU was signed over the weekend, and we're seeing that play out.
Now, we saw something remarkable at the White House yesterday. Vice President J.D. Vance defended the agreement with Iran and made a rare public rebuke of critics in Israel. Let's play that for our viewers.
If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the president of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in.
What do you make of what the vice president said there from the briefing room, and where does this leave U.S.-Israeli relations?
Well, he's saying the quiet part out loud, that the Trump administration really can't be outflanked from the right on this. And so that puts Prime Minister Netanyahu and his coalition government in a very uncomfortable position, where there are parts of this MOU that are extremely difficult for them to swallow. I mean, kicking the can down the road on the nuclear program, no mention of Iran's ballistic missile or drone program, and of course, this element of support for proxies that could just be benefited by a windfall in sanctions relief. But at the end of the day, I think what is true is that there is going to be an election in Israel in this fall, and the prime minister needs the relationship with the United States to continue to support him in that process. And so there's not a whole lot of room for this Israeli government, despite their deep concerns about the MOU and what comes next.
Yeah, fascinating to watch this unfold. Elisa Ewers, thanks for being with us this Friday.